Hello flower friends, welcome. And I am so excited today to introduce you to Bill Parks. He is Faith Center's resident expert on Phalaenopsis orchids, and today he's going to teach us all kinds of things about orchids. I am so excited to get started and to learn more, and I've brought Bill some interesting examples that are pretty big mistakes. They're maybe common mistakes that we can all learn from. And so Bill's going to teach us how to repot them and answer all of our questions along the way. Thanks, Bill. Thank you so much for being willing to teach us.
Welcome to my orchid collection.
Yes.
I'm glad that you brought your orchids. We're going to keep your orchids over here because
yes,
it's really important that we not mix collections of orchids because of transmission of infections and diseases.
Yeah.
So today we have 3 of Jen's plants that we're going to repot. They're all Phalaenopsis. Phalaenopsis are commonly called the moth orchid, but we know them as the grocery store orchid because it's the orchid that you see when you walk into the floral section of the grocery store.
And one of the most common kind of complaints about these when I asked for questions to bring for this video was, you know, I have one and it hasn't done anything since. It has not sent up a flower spike, it has not reproduced flowers, and so this is actually really common. They're beautiful when you take them home from the grocery store, Bill, and then they just become a beautiful green house plant for a while. So can you tell us a little bit more about what we can do to encourage it to reflower?
Okay, so Phalaenopsis, as we said, are probably the most common one. And when you either buy one and take it home or someone gives you as a gift, you buy it because it has a beautiful flower, or they give it to you because it has a beautiful flower. Mm-hmm. Now, they are perfectly happy being green houseplants. Yeah. But in order to get them to bloom, we have to take some special care.
Yeah. So technically, sometimes at the grocery store, the way that they are potted would be part of the problem. Would you find that to
That's
be
correct?
Yeah. They just don't have the right medium.
One of the worst examples that you see, because it's done with mass marketing of Phalaenopsis, is they put them in the media and then they shrink wrap it. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you've seen that light plastic coating. It's just totally shrink wrap, and they do that because it's going to keep the moisture in. Mm-hmm. The problem is over time that moisture breaks down the media, sure, and that's not good for the roots. Yeah. Orchids are air plants. These varieties of orchids are epiphytes, and that means that they grow in the air. They don't grow in soil like our terrestrial plants, which are outside. So let's jump in with this first one, and you're going to notice 2 things. I have 2 trays here. One tray is for unpotting, and we're going to take this media and we're going to go put it in our garden because it's great for compost. But we don't want either the pot or the media to get mixed in with what we're going to repot in. So we'll use a clean pot, and we'll use a whole set of clean media with an insert.
A liner.
So we're going to set that right there, just so that people get the idea of what we're doing. Yeah. Inserts that are clear allow for sunlight to get to the roots, and that helps the orchid grow. And then you always want some sort of a retaining type of pot so that you can control the moisture and the water. Now, this pot happens to have a hole on the bottom, so you obviously have to have a saucer or a tray to go underneath it. Otherwise, it'll ruin your furniture, sure, or your windowsill or your counter. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to set this aside for right now. We'll put it over here so you can see what we're doing. And the very first thing I want to say is when we work with orchids so that we can prevent diseases, it's very important to prevent, I had to walk over there and get something, to prevent the spread of diseases. So I use hydrogen peroxide on all my tools. I use them on just my kitchen knife. I use a kitchen knife that's not sharp because it helps me dig the roots out without breaking the roots. And then we use scissors or pruning shears. And I use an anvil pruning shear, and we just take these and we just spray them with hydrogen peroxide. And they're not sterile, but it kills the likelihood that anything that they're going to get would be transmitted through that. So we have clean tools now. We can set our hydrogen peroxide aside. Excellent. We're going to just take this and we're really just going to support the plant. Oh my gosh. And we're just going to try and empty everything out of it. I'm using my hand to free up the media, and I was really lucky. All of the roots came out.
That's pretty
So
good.
here we have the pot. I know we're not going to be reusing this pot, but I want to get all this media out. And if I were reusing this pot, I'd take one of my old adobes, which I keep, and I'd use it to clean it thoroughly out. And again, after that, I'd spray it with hydrogen peroxide. Now, that may be overcautious, but it certainly prevents me from getting disease in my plants. So now we can pick up the plant, and the great news is all the media, this is almost turned to soil. So there's no wonder that this plant, look, everything that you see that I'm holding in this hand was growing.
Based off of this one root?
No, look, it was growing outside the pot, and only this one, which is rotten and no longer viable, was growing in this decomposed media, which is soil. So we'll come along and we'll gently try and remove anything that's able to come off. We'll take our shears and we'll cut off just the dead roots. There's one root here. We're going to lay it out so you can see it. There's only one root that's dead, so we'll just clip it out.
Did you anticipate that more of it would be dead?
Yeah, but there were a lot more roots in here, but they're gone.
They've gone back to the earth at this point.
See, they're gone. If we look hard enough, we can find other roots, but for the most part, they disintegrated with time.
Is there anything else about the soil condition here that tells you anything that you might need to know for the repotting portion? Like any indicators of anything that you might want to address at this time? Is it hydrated? Is it diseased?
It's a little stressed. It's
stressed.
cut back to just small growth. When an orchid is not happy, all right, this leaf came out, I'm going to guess, last year, 1 year ago.
Okay.
Because they produce between 2 and 3 leaves per year.
Okay.
So I know it's not much older than a year. And then look, this leaf didn't get as big as this leaf. So that tells me the plant wasn't happy. It was stressed because it was not able to thoroughly, completely grow the leaf. If it can't completely grow the leaf, it's probably not going to bloom. Okay. And then look, we now have a new growth. It's somewhat happier because look, it's already equal in size
It's almost the same.
to the previous one. Now, being monopodal, that means they have one stem, just one stem down the center. Phalaenopsis will put out alternating leaves. Okay?
One every other.
Yep.
Okay.
So let's go back now with a different pair of scissors, and I see some root tips. Here, this root tip is dead.
Okay.
We want to cut that off. As a matter of fact, we sort of want to cut it right where it's green.
Okay.
Just barely. Orchids don't like their roots being cut, so we're going to cut as very little. Everything else, the end of every root is green.
Pretty good shape.
Is in great shape. Now, people often ask, well, it was in a big pot.
Right?
Okay, well, I want to put it in a bigger pot.
No, that's not the right answer,
Not the right answer.
That's the right answer.
Orchids love to be crowded. They don't bloom if they have all the room in the world. So what we're going to do in the pot, I'm glad your pot that you got is smaller than the pot that we had last year. So this is now going to be perfect type of size. Now, one of the problems is we can't cram every root in here. So we're going to selectively sort of look at what we can do.
What will fit and what won't.
And we have to be ginger because look, if we left it like that, oh my gosh.
It's way up in the air, right?
Yeah. So we're probably going to have to separate some of the roots and only put half of them in and leave half of them to be outside.
I actually kind of like some of the roots sticking. I think it's kind of fun.
So we're going to set this one aside.
Okay.
And we're going to unpot another one.
Okay, this one.
Yep.
This one's a little sadder, I think, maybe.
Yeah. All right, as we look at this, you can see here, the good news is it's producing a new leaf. The sad news is, once again, here's the leaf from a year ago. Here's a leaf, it looks like it's not even 3 months old because it's almost brand new. And yet, already at the end of it, it's not going to grow anymore because you can see it's got now darker green, it's curling, it's shriveling. So it wasn't happy, so it went to produce another leaf. Okay.
Let's try
now,
again.
you commonly see from the florist, and this is not a bad thing, it just is. You commonly see that people put Spanish moss around them. And
it was aesthetic. It was,
yes.
it was an aesthetic choice I did to try, because I just didn't enjoy the way it looked. But.
The real advantage of Spanish moss is it helps hold moisture in.
Sure.
When you have orchids inside in our houses, we're very dry.
Okay.
So one of the things I have a problem in my collection is constantly keeping up with the needs that the orchid has.
Yeah.
All right, so this one's not wanting to come out right away, so because it's got roots. It's got roots all around it. So we'll set this one aside. And again, nice. We have a clear pot that this is in. We're going to start just playing with it.
Loosening it.
Okay, try to loosen it up. This is where our knife may come in here. We're going to turn it upside down.
Okay.
I know this looks like we're torturing the plant, but we're just trying to get everything out. And you don't want, as much as possible, you don't want to break off these roots. Now we've got a problem or two root here.
I see a problem though.
That grew right through the pot.
Are you just
right through the liner?
Cut the liner to free it a little?
Yeah, I'm going to snip it with a pair of scissors.
Okay.
But right now I'm just trying to get all the media out that I can.
Just kind of loosen it up.
Yeah, and it's very dry in here, so it's not doing well with this. This one doesn't have good roots on the inside.
Uh-oh.
So what we're going to do to get through this part here is just pinch the plastic.
Right where those slits are.
Right, and we're just going to cut a little bit. We're still going to be able to use this pot again, so I'm trying not to destroy it.
Oh, I don't need it.
We just want, yeah, well, I do.
Oh, you want it? Okay.
I'm happy to take it off your hand.
You can definitely have that one.
Now, right here
What is that?
is scale.
Oh no.
So
Scale's bad.
there's our culprit that's sucking right off the root. I don't know if you saw it.
Yeah, I do see
I'll
it.
set it down here. It's a dried case of a scale. So I think the insect already is gone.
Oh.
All right. So
scale is an insect that's going to cause the
we
disease.
lost that leaf when we turned it upside down.
Wasn't happy anyhow,
Yep.
right?
Probably so. So I made cuts below. Now I'm going to insert the scissors and make cuts above on this little pot so I can try and get this out without trying not to damage the root, because these are actually good roots that I'm trying to save.
Okay.
You can use a razor blade or
Our
tool.
cameraman. Our cameraman has become distracted.
And I just broke off a little bit of the pot so we can now get the root out.
You can free it out a little. Okay.
So now we can feed the roots out of the hole as we take the plant out. Here's a root that's also attached. So we can just sort of lift this one up and push the root bud back through.
Oh, I see what you've done.
And we can take our knife and separate it from the wall very gently, not breaking the root, just freeing things up. All right, here's the last of the same root. See, we just pop it off.
I really wouldn't have thought that would be so in there, you know, like I didn't know that it was so.
These roots adhere to the inside. They're really good. One of the things we haven't said before, but is this. This plant's been abused, Jen. Sorry.
I know, man.
But I gotta tell you.
That's okay. We're learning.
Orchids are amazing at thriving. Okay,
And this is an example of them?
Yeah. And so with very little they can do a lot. Now this was the original plug of its osmunda, fern fiber, that it was potted when it was very, very small. Now here we've got a whole bunch of dead roots and things. So we have to use our cutter to cut off an old bloom spike.
Okay.
And you need a cutter because they're the only thing that's really sharp enough to cut through. That's almost like a wood.
Woody fiber.
But we'll use the scissors to cut off some of the dead roots.
Some of these, and these are the ones that look a little, well, for lack of a better term, though, they look a little rotten.
Yeah, they are rotten.
Yeah.
So we're going to just take off the rotten ones that we can see, and then I'm going to show you another trick. Say I don't know if the roots are any good. I can always wet the roots, okay? And those that are green are going to be viable, and those that are brown are dead. So watch the difference now in looking at the color. You can
Sure,
see what's,
clearly.
yeah, you can see what's a good root and you can see what's a bad root.
Sure.
So orchid roots come out green, then they turn, as they age, they turn white. This one's still firm and full.
They're sort of
but
silvery,
then
greenish, whitish, right? Yeah.
once they are dying, they turn black or brown.
So this is an example of one that's no good.
So really, all the roots that we have, sometimes the biggest problem in repotting orchids is you have too many good roots. And so you're going to have to decide, like I think we will in that one, what to sacrifice. So I'm sort of curious whether these black ones are still any good. So I'm going to cut the tip of one of them off. I think they feel good. And sure enough, it's green.
Inside.
So we're not going to go cutting, even though there's a big, I'm trying to untangle them a little bit.
Yeah.
It helps to untangle. Even though there's a big brown or black spot on this and they're becoming woody, they're still viable.
Okay.
These are still good.
And
Okay.
leaving as many of them as possible is going to make the healthiest plant possible.
You know why? Not so much because the root's good. I'm going to cut off the tip of this one to get back to something green. But because they help you anchor the plant when you're potting it.
Okay.
If you cut off everything from down below and you stick it in a pot, there's nothing holding it.
Okay.
And so it tends to wobble a lot and it has to develop its own new root system before it's going to be stable in the beautiful pot that you're providing it with. So we have to be really careful. I'm sad that we lost this leaf. I didn't mean to knock that leaf off, but I think it was from turning it upside down and doing everything. Because these monopodal orchids only grow through one stem. We've now got to protect this little new one if it's going to survive.
Okay.
Okay? All right, so this one's now clean. We've even given it a bath, and it's going to be ready for a pot as well.
Wonderful.
Okay, so I'm going to take these things and just wash them off for a second. And leave them right down there. We're finished with this for now, so we're going to set our future mulch, and we'll focus on repotting. Let's grab the second insert. So we've got these two inserts. And, okay, now, what you repot in, what media you use is the next thing we need to really talk about.
Okay.
Almost all orchids traditionally have been grown in redwood bark.
Oh, how interesting.
Okay, so we have a mix. We have an orchid mix here specifically for Phalaenopsis, which you can get at Pearson's.
Okay, great.
And then to be an equal opportunity advertiser, you can pick up G&B typically at Aces. So
Okay.
you can get both of these G&Bs at both places.
Okay.
All right. So in this, I'm going to show you the difference. This is large.
Yeah, these pieces look
These
bigger.
are medium-sized orchid bark. Okay. See, size is medium.
Medium.
You don't want small because it decomposes too fast. Large is okay. It just makes it harder to pot with. So you want medium in size. Okay.
Okay.
But when I was there at Pearson's buying my medium bark, I said, wow, look, this is really cool. There's a Phalaenopsis orchid potting mix that has other ingredients in it. And you'll notice the white here and other things. And so in this media, we have perlite, okay, or pumice. We have charcoal, okay, black charcoal.
Wow.
Nice pieces of charcoal. All of these things mixed together create air between the media.
And it gives it nutrients.
Right. It's not soil, so you don't want like sand. You don't want dirt. These roots need to breathe, and so roots will grow through the media, and they can breathe with all this in place. So this is ideal, but what makes it even more ideal is when I mix
Two
this
together.
with this. So then I have a larger bark. It creates more airspace as we're potting. So I will typically use half and half. Now, you don't have to go to the store and buy a lot. If you just are repotting one or two orchids, just get the Phalaenopsis mix. But if you're doing a volume of orchids, okay, if you're doing a lot more, then I find it helpful to mix the two. You can mix it all up together. I'm going to try and use about equal parts.
It's a little like baking, right, Bill?
A little like baking. So there we go. So now we have, I'm going to pick the plant up and set it aside. Now we just want to take this and get it, it's all great. So then, you see the reason why I'm working on a tray?
A tray, yeah.
It's a huge mess otherwise.
Okay.
So all right. So now what we're going to try and do is figure out what to put in the pot. Okay, and so
and what to leave out as an air root.
Exactly.
Okay.
So I'd love to see if I can put all of it in. I'll bet you didn't think I could put all of this in.
I wouldn't have doubted you, Bill.
Well, I don't know that I can, but what I've done in the past is just keep putting the orchid in.
You kind of twist a little as your technique there.
I pull out the one that's obviously not going to go, and then I keep working at it. Okay, and if I find another one that I think can come out, I'll take it out. Now, I've really sort of gotten it where I want it to be.
Yeah, with only just a few out.
Yeah. So this root, I really want it to, let's see, can I get it in or not? Not sure I can. This root clearly is going to be out. The highest root on the stem, the highest roots on the stems are going to go to the outside.
Okay.
So then we just set it in the middle, trying not to set it on its own roots, and we just start putting. I'm very mean, but now, because I don't want to break the other leaves, I'm holding the monopodal right at its base. But really here's the other thing I'm doing. Watch, I'm putting some gentle pressure. I'm not just throwing things in and leaving them. I'm coming back, working with one finger, typically my index finger, just to push it down, okay, and get the media thoroughly in there. We want this totally packed. I should say totally packed, but loosely packed. And so I'll feed bark underneath here. Why don't you put some on that side? We'll turn it so they can see from the front. Yeah, just put it on top.
And will these snap if you push too hard? Like be kind of gingerly?
Well, you're going to crush them. If you're pushing too hard, you would crush them. Okay. But you notice I want, because we've uncovered a hole here. Now I'm going to put some more in there. Now there's going to be another thing we have to add here, and that is we're going to, since we only have one leaf now that's big and the rest is small, once we get it all worked in, we're going to put a support for the stem.
Oh, I have a stem with a clamp.
Yeah, and so hair barrettes make the best holders. They're generally pretty gentle. Again, I'm still trying to fill in holes here. So I'm going to push a piece of bark into a hole. I want to overfill it at first, and then I'll take some of it away.
And Bill, this process where we're putting this new medium of bark and other components in, approximately how often does one need to do that for their orchids at home?
About every 2 years.
Okay, so it's not something you have to do a lot. It's
no.
Good.
Now I think you can see we pretty well got this packed.
Yeah.
It's not going anywhere. It's pretty sturdy.
That's really nice.
Okay? Yeah. Now, I don't like the fact, I'm really upset with myself that I lost that leaf. So now, I can't do anything about it, but I have to provide, do you have your little stem holder? Or if not, I've got one.
Yes, right here. I only have one though.
That's right, I've got more. So this is perfect. This is a bamboo, or it's actually a reed of some sort. And so what we're going to do is we need to give support to this leaf. And look, instead of it leaning over, I want to hold the plant up. So I'm going to go over on this side, and in between those roots that I just repotted, I'm going to put this. And I'm going to do something sort of mean. I'm going to put a clip on the leaf. But that's because I want it to hold it up. I don't want it to bend down, because if it bends down, it's going to snap off. Okay. We're trying to make these upright plants. Now, these things love to grow toward the sun. So periodically in your windowsill, you're going to turn it, a quarter of a turn every week.
Here's an example of one that I did not turn.
Okay.
And as you can see, it has grown towards the light.
We're going to get to that. Now look, we're going to set it inside here, and it's going to be perfect. Now there's only one thing I do before one more thing I do before I set it in its holding pot. I'm moving things away. I want to water it.
Oh,
And I'm watering it to get all the dust off of the media. And so I'm just going to water it. Now this is how you routinely water an orchid. You just run it under cold water. Okay, never hot. You can, if your hands are too cold, you can warm it up just a little bit, not hot. Orchids want to drain. They want to get super soaking wet, and then they want to dry out. They don't like having wet feet, so never leave them in water where they're sitting in the water.
And what do you think of the trick that some people have mentioned about putting an ice cube just on top and letting it slowly?
You know, that's for the novice.
Yeah.
Okay. I think our group is really ready for something.
I think so too.
more. But here we're going to carefully set it down inside.
It looks beautiful.
And now on its saucer, the saucer is going to catch any extra water. We have a repotted orchid.
That looks beautiful.
We just have to, you know, it looks a lot better than when we started. Okay. All right, so we finished repotting the first one, and now we're just going to shake our media down to one side so that we can pick it up again. And we're ready to bring in our second pot. Jen, you're gonna get to work with this one. I don't know that I can get all the roots in this one.
I think that they're fun sticking out. I think that's
So
one of the beautiful things about an orchid. It makes them unique and different from other houseplants.
again, I sort of have to figure out, but one of the things is they always put up resistance. So what you need to do is just work with the plant by twisting the pot. You can get the orchid down to where we want it to go. This one's going to be pretty unruly, so I'm going to play with a number of different patterns before I do it. You know.
What if you had soaked the roots in water? Would they soften up? Do they?
No.
Not so much? Okay.
No, the roots are pretty much formed. I'm just trying to figure out who I'm going to get in the pot and who has to stay out of the pot. You can see these were in the pot before. Because, so if I can get another one of them in, I think we're getting there.
Yeah.
Again, we're just sort of we're letting the plant tell us what it will do. I don't think I can twist this one down.
And it would be bad to just cut this one off since it has so many.
Yeah.
Okay. We would want to
So
do that.
I think I can get this one in. All right, there. Now we've got
Cool.
you know, we've got all but 4 in, and we're in good shape. So I'm going to hold it and let you start the repotting process.
Okay. You know, really, this is quite simple, Bill. I think what it is it feels a little intimidating.
Oh, it's very intimidating when you
But
first
really,
start.
you
Now
know,
let's
you've made
turn
this.
the plant.
Yeah.
Right.
You've made this very not intimidating. It isn't as intimidating as it seems, really. Because I don't think that I would have gone and bought this and attempted it if I hadn't been encouraged by you.
Yeah, you have to know what you're looking for at the store, what you want to buy. And so you're going to buy primarily either a ready-made potting mix or just redwood bark. You don't need all the extras. The extras with the pumice and with the charcoal just allow the roots to breathe better. And you don't really like the big pieces. So push those aside and use the smaller ones. Yeah, I usually put these in the bottom of my pot.
That seems really
Now-
good. That was easy, Bill.
Yeah.
Not hard at
So
all.
we're going to do something different with the third one, okay?
Okay.
Because why do the same thing
I mean, we
three
should learn
times?
new things, right?
Okay, we're going to come over here and water this one.
Right, till it
okay?
flushes through. Good.
Yeah.
With cool
So
water.
we want to make sure that it gets watered. Now we're not going to water these now for 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
2 weeks, you want to leave them alone. You just shocked the orchid by it does not like having been repotted. As much as it's going to love the nutrients it gets from the new mulch, it did not like being repotted.
Yeah.
Okay?
But that's okay.
So it's going to go into shock. So we're going to do nothing for it for 2 weeks. Okay?
And then when it is time, we're just going to lift that clear liner out and just rinse water,
Exactly.
cool water through it again.
All right, so look, we have 2 beautiful orchids
They look
repotted.
really pretty. And,
Yeah,
and I
you're
really,
happy with your new
I
pots.
am. I'm going to post a link for the pots. They
All
were for
right, now
Amazon.
these
Very
look like
inexpensive.
they've been through a transformation.
They look 1,000 times better built. They look like they're
Right.
going to produce flowers, and I can't wait.
Okay, so let's do this one a little different.
Okay, that sounds like a good idea.
This came from Orchids for the People, and I recognize that because the owner there, Blaine, is really an expert at repotting with coconut husk. And coconut husk, the advantage is it doesn't retain its moisture. It
Dries
dries out, so your roots don't rot. Okay, so and Blaine's repotting thousands of orchids. He has a collection, I'm guessing it's over 3,000
It
plants.
has to be, yeah.
And so he doesn't have as much time as we spent repotting those. So he wants something that's quick and easy. And so he'll just repot without anything else, just in coconut husk.
Okay.
And some people ask the question, well, do you need to use the redwood bark?
Sure.
And the answer is no. You can repot these in redwood bark. You can repot them in coconut husk. You can even use osmunda, which this really, once it gets wet, stays wet.
It retains.
So we want to use only a little of this, typically. But I have to use osmunda because in my house, it's very dry.
Oh, sure.
And so orchids tend to dry out. Now, once we repot the orchid, we water it, and then we don't water it for 2 weeks.
Yes.
After that, how often should you water it? Well, that depends on how dry your house is and how much sunlight you have. But typically, you're going to water once a week.
Okay.
If it dries out in between, you might spray, not water, but spray it, mist it, a second time.
I do have a mister for my succulents, so
So
I'll use it.
a mister is one of the things we want. Now this one's really grown healthy in here, so I'm gonna start to try and remove it.
This one's been in this container for 6 years, at least. It could be a
And
little
that's
longer.
a tribute to the fact that if it was in anything else, the media would have broken down, but not
the
coconut husk. Coconut husk is very, very good at being very long lasting. Blaine doesn't have to repot his orchids every 2 years. If you're doing them like we're doing them, typically your orchid, as we said before, wants to be repotted after it blooms the second year.
I see. So really, the fact that it hasn't been repotted in over 6 years is not ideal.
Whoa, here we are. Look, we managed to pull this out. We didn't leave any of the roots. We didn't tear anything. And Blaine has this totally potted in coconut husk.
And is
Now-
this healthy? Does it look good
Oh, it's
to you?
very healthy. Now, here's the problem.
We did okay on this one.
I'm not anxious to take every piece of this away.
Uh-huh.
And I tell you why, because it's just going to disrupt it. It's just going to cause more problems.
Okay.
So I'm going to pull what will come out. Okay? And really, this coconut husk looks like it's brand new. It doesn't look like it's 6 years old. It's
Impressive.
not decomposed at all, except on the bottom where you can see where the water is gathered. It's a little bit, look, it comes out here a lot easier.
Sure.
So I'm trying to get a little bit of this coconut husk out.
Wait, is this still an appropriate size container for this orchid?
It may be a little tight,
A little tight.
but that's okay. Now, I want you to see that when an orchid is very small, the first thing it's potted in is osmunda.
Sure.
And so we have really, there's no roots in the center of this. Notice all the roots are growing to the outside, but this center is totally gone.
No.
And that's okay. I mean, you know, it's been in there for 6 years. So we're just going to play with the center and get out this, I call it a plug. You can see it's a plug of osmunda where there's no roots. Now, when we repot it, the roots will grow back into the center.
And take that space up.
Yeah, they'll take that space up. So we're just playing with this and pulling out the fern fiber, the osmunda. And I'm at the base of the plant. I can see, here's the first roots
The original root.
that are right in there. So we'll break some of it off because it's dead. There's nothing there. It's acting as a... So we're essentially creating a little bit of a display with this by just broadening it out. And, ooh, I gotta hold it. I don't want to lose that lead. But, you know, look through the center now.
Yeah.
We can show you. Again, there's no roots in the center. They all spread out. And this is really good. And here's the base. I don't know if you can see. Here's the base, the first root of the plant. We're going to leave a lot of it in because it's going to help us. And it obviously enjoyed this. So I'm trying to take 1/3 of it away.
Okay.
But this is really your next level, your next stage of repotting. And that is, you're not just putting things back in orchid bark, but you're trying to give it a better base and more opportunity to grow. All right, so I've got enough of this away that I'm good. And we'll just go in.
Do you see anything in the pot that's concerning to you, or does it look
No,
pretty
you
good?
just want to get all the debris that, again, has broken down because it's deteriorated. So we'll clean the pot out, and that way it's less likely to have any problems or diseases. Get the outside, get the bottom. Okay, so now we have this one cleaned out. Well, I'm having a hard time finding everything now that I'm moving it around. Oh, there it is. I was looking for my buddy. Peroxide.
Hydrogen peroxide.
Okay, so I can squirt this in there. The peroxide is only active for about 10 to 15 seconds. It kills on contact. Essentially it's an astringent. It's not an antibiotic at all, but it just kills any organism or bacteria or fungus or virus that it hits.
Okay.
So it's good for cleaning. So then to neutralize it, all I have to do is wash it. Okay? And once I wash it away, there's no more peroxide here.
Okay.
So let's move our plant over to the new media. We'll get rid of our discard again. We'll put that back. And we'll try and play a game. This is a bigger challenge.
I'm glad I could bring you a challenge.
Now, what we typically want to do if we're going to create 3 levels, a dry level, medium moisture level, and then a high moisture level as we come up.
Okay.
From the bottom
Layering.
up. Right,
Just
so
like
we're going to try and layer it. So what we're going to do is, what we want down first is the coconut, because that's the driest. Okay, that drains the best. So we're going to move the coconut husk down, okay, so that you can almost see we've got the plant coming up out.
So just kind of moving that coconut
Yeah, we're
husk
just-
down the roots.
Right. So we're trying to get the coconut husk to be at the bottom. And then it's going to keep it'll mean that in this tall pot that isn't penetrated by light, okay, it's going to dry out faster. So now we're going to have to play. We may not have much room for anything other than just trying to get it back in there. But it likes to be crowded. You know, I think in truth this one's really ready for a bigger pot.
Okay. Maybe I'll get on the internet and order one up.
And notice when I put it in, I'm trying to get it to be upright.
Yeah,
It
you
was
are
not upright before. Now I'm using a little bit of force.
Uh-huh.
All right, now, with this one, because we're trying to keep, we still want it to have moisture, we're going to put in a little bit of mulch. And every time we put it in, we're going to have to sort of force it down because, yeah. So I'm going to just sort of play with this with my hands. Again, I'm not pushing hard enough to crush the roots. I'm just pushing hard enough to snug things in.
Just firm and gentle.
I'm being very firm. All right, so I'm trying to upright the plant. Okay.
And that really kind of props it up like a support, honestly.
Yeah, the media helps hold it in support. Okay. Again, your orchid is not happy that we're repotting it. It'll be happy in about 2 to 3 weeks, but it's not happy right now.
You guys are gonna have to explain that at the end of the video.
Maybe you'll put up a little thing that says "Kitty at play." You can put it on in words on the screen.
So there we've got our second layer in, and then to keep moisture in it, to help these roots out, we're just going to feed a little bit of osmunda. Remember, when it was first potted, it was potted solely in osmunda because osmunda holds on to moisture and it promotes really rapid growth until a point that the roots are too wet. But typically with orchids that are just being potted for the first time, they want to have more moisture. So we're going to put this so that once you water it, you probably won't have to water this more than once a week, maybe not even once, but every 2 weeks.
I don't think I've ever watered it more than once a week. But I can put it to where it pulls up. I can put the sun over here and it'll continue
You
to...
could, but it's not going to do that for you.
It won't?
Nope.
Okay.
So we're going to come along and give it some help. Okay, so it needs a rod to hold it upright. Okay, and you can see it's still leaning, so what I'm going to do is pull it up and then very carefully insert this without going through a root.
Don't puncture any of the roots, right?
Yeah, you're trying not to do that. Invariably you might, but now we've given it the support. Now it's an upright plant.
That looks
Okay.
much prettier, Bill.
All right, now let's see. I'm going to come over here first and water it. Now this one's going to take longer to drain.
So maybe you could just like when I'm watering it at home, I can just let it sit in the sink for a while until it stops running out, right?
Yes, once you
And
water
then
it,
set it back on its little
again,
tray.
you're going to notice that the osmunda becomes a lot easier to work with once it's wet.
Far more
You
pliable.
can just firmly put it down in there. All right, now it's leaking out the bottom. That's perfect. Okay. So the nice thing is you have a base here, and you can set it on the base, or you could leave it. I typically do this when I'm watering something like this. I typically set it here, and you can see the water still coming out. But if you put it in your base, you're going to have to come along
Typically.
and empty out the base.
Sure.
So now we have a third one.
Now, Bill, you said to water again in 2 weeks, and they are going to be a little unhappy at first. How long do you think it will take now that they are replanted and happier to produce a flower spike? Like, when could I expect that to start?
I don't know when it's going to produce its first flower spike. But a good sign would be you see continued leaf growth, and the leaves are getting bigger than the preceding leaf.
Okay, that's a good sign.
And that if it wants to bloom, sometimes after being repotted from the shock, they'll put out a bloom spike. So about 20% of the time, when you repot an orchid that hasn't been repotted in forever, it immediately produces a bloom spike.
So, Bill, now that these are repotted and they're going to go through that initial shock phase, maybe they'll start to produce new leaves, and eventually, if we're lucky, they're going to send out a new flower spike, a new stem.
Bloom spike.
Bloom spike. They're going to send out a new bloom spike eventually. At what point will you start to clamp the bloom spike to your support post so that the flower comes up instead of out?
Well, typically the bloom spikes are pretty flexible, and they will grow immediately out and start going toward the window or where the source of sun is coming from. And so 5 days ago, this one was totally bent over, and I just came and totally turned it 180 degrees so that the sun that it was hitting would straighten it out. And in 5 days, it's gone up about 60 degrees. It's almost straight up. So I'll continue to orient this away from the sun, orient the bloom spike away from the sunlight so that it will straighten itself up.
Continues to orient itself.
You don't need to really clamp them until they get long. I didn't clamp this one until a week ago, and it's been here for probably about 6 weeks.
Okay, so several inches before you would.
So the real thing is this: as it grows taller and taller until it starts to put out the buds, you may need to just totally move the clamp. You may need even a longer post to hold up the bloom spike.
Sure, because some of these come with very long, beautiful, in full bloom. You know, they have.
They call that a fluorescence or a spray, an orchid spray when they're in bloom. Now, routinely after the second week, you're going to come, and once a week you'll water it the same way that we watered it.
Sure.
But once a week you can just, you have to adjust your spray here. Once a week you can just spray it so that you moisten everything up, and that's enough water for it. Okay?
Great.
This is essentially the ice cube trick,
I see.
but
Okay.
it's more direct and you get all the roots.
Sure.
So I think we can move past ice cubes.
Okay.
And
Get
all
a
you
spray
need is
bottle.
a sprayer. Now,
Sure.
then during the growing season between March and October, when orchids typically grow, we also feed them.
Feed them with
So,
some food, right?
You can use any orchid food, okay? You're using Miracle Grows. I have Grow More, and you can get Grow More. Again, I hate to do paid political ads, but you can get Grow More at Pearson's.
I have a container of this for my house plants as well, this brand, and I do.
The
enjoy
problem
it.
with Grow More is it comes in 4 different varieties. And if you were getting what Phalaenopsis need, you get what's called the green formulation, which is urea-free.
Urea free.
And
that's
it is a
important.
20-10-20. Okay, let's check this one out and
Yeah, I
see
don't
what
know
it
what this one
is. Well, we're going to look. This is a 30-10-10. It's a general purpose orchid fertilizer, and the 30 is there to support bloom growth.
I see.
But this is not urea free. This has urea in it. Okay.
So this is not good for the Phalaenopsis.
No, not
That's
necessarily.
not so great.
It's not the most ideal.
Okay.
Okay, if
We
you
need to
want to
some-
get more specific and you're trying to produce blooms,
I am trying to produce a
then
bloom.
get some Grow More. You can get Grow More online by going to growmore.com,
Sure.
and they'll walk you through. There are 4 different types of fertilizer. I have the 4 different types because I have different
All 4
varieties, not just Phalaenopsis.
Sure.
But make sure that you get urea free because that's only one. There's only one formulation that's urea free.
And how often during that period of time between March and October would you recommend using some of this over just plain water?
Well, I add just a fraction, like less than a quarter of a teaspoon to a quart of water. Okay, and I can use this all the time.
I see.
And so when I water, I'm fertilizing.
Also at the same time.
A fond acronym for orchids is water or fertilized weekly.
Weekly.
So very weak dilution. In other words, if you're mixing this, it calls for more than a teaspoon
Yeah, it's
in
one of the
a
last
gallon. Okay, so you just cut it down to 1/4 of what it recommends, and so it's a very weak solution, and you do it once a week.
Okay.
So weekly. Now these are really okay. This is really needing fertilizer. So again, all I'm doing is wetting the roots that I can see. If you're smart, you'll stick it down in your sink, and then you can get the roots that are on the outside of the pot. Or, as you mentioned before, you take the pot out
And let it drain through.
you just try and do that. Okay? And there won't be, if you're watering just that limited, there won't be water that's going to run out, a couple of drops, but not anything big. And so that's all I need to, once a week, that's all I do to it.
Wow. That's
And,
cool.
and this is probably one of my healthiest Phalaenopsis. It's sticking out a second bloom spike in a year.
That's wonderful.
So, and this one is the first time I've seen this one bloom in quite some time. But orchids don't bloom from the new growth, they bloom from mature growth. So you're looking for it to bloom from the growth from a year or 2 years ago.
So really this one, the one that we did first, is going to take a while probably before this one's ready to produce a flower.
This one will most likely be the one that does not bloom. I would pick the other 2 to bloom before, because this one is got a lot of uphill battle to go because it lost a leaf. It has only 1 mature leaf and 1 new leaf.
Right.
So, that one's going to be the hardest one.
Well, that's okay. We'll be patient with him.
So, let's say that you do everything we're doing for the next 6 to 8 weeks. In 6 to 8 weeks, let's get back together and let's talk about the problems that we have with growth. Let's talk about why they're not blooming, why you have these beautiful green plants.
Okay.
But the first thing is you got to get them repotted. If you don't repot them, there's no hope for them.
Right.
Once you get them repotted, we're going to talk about diseases and how to prevent them, and fertilizing and air and temperature and humidity. We'll talk about all those things another
All the
time.
factors. Well, thank you so much, Bill. It has been such a pleasure. Thank you for repotting my 3 orchids, and I just love it when I meet someone who has sort of an unusual hobby and is willing to share that information, and to help us learn more about how we can have beautiful orchids for our home. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.